So I'm going to call this the final video for tuning with the 2300 Sniper before we end up doing a swap, which now that I've got it so dialed in, I'm like hesitant to ever pull this motor out of here because it's running so fucking good. I want to show you the last things that I changed. I've spent countless hours trying to perfect the idle on this thing because I just know that it's capable of it despite what everybody says. And it's damn near perfect now. So let's fire it up and show you what kind of vacuum it's making. So it's going to be very hard to tell in the video, and I've been told by other folks that I've talked to before that they can't tell how bad the idle is. They think it's pretty decent from the videos, and I realize that the videos don't show it very well. But at any rate, you can see where the timing is kind of hovering. Three things that I've adjusted are idle AFR, timing adjustment at idle, because there is a obviously variable timing element. That's why the timing is fluctuating like it's supposed to. And of course we're looking at vacuum. And it seems to be around the 65 range. Every once in a while it blips and it does go up to 70, although I'm sitting in the driveway now and I just started it back up. After you start driving it a little bit, it seems to want to hover around 60 to 65, which is pretty good. That's about 12 inches of vacuum. Just kind of anecdotally, the idle is very smooth. I mean, for any stretch of the imagination or it's perfect. For something of this age with a log manifold on it, I think it's better than it ever could have been. So anyways, what we're going to do is we're going to suck the tune out of it. We're going to just take a look at some of the settings that I played with to get it to where it's at. And like I said, this is the last time I'm going to mess with this. Like I said, I'm almost hesitant to pull this motor out of here because it's so good. So let's get this out of here. And we'll just show it out of gear here real quick. We're hovering in the 55, every once in a while 60 range. So that's probably about 13 inches of vacuum. I couldn't expect any more out of it for the cubic inches versus cam size. All right, let's start with AFR. So like I said, I've got it in this area around 13.5. Holley tells you to try and smooth these areas as much as possible. That's why there's some different colors in here, is because it ramps up into the low vacuum, higher RPM range to 14.3. I run it a little bit rich because it's E15, so 14.7 would be a little bit lean because it's not tuned by Lambda. So that's where we're at there. So like I said, we bumped this up from 13.2 to 5, and that was one of the last things that I did. We did go into idle control. And by the way, we're idling at 700 in gear, which is for a small cam like this, it can't be 525 or whatever it says in the book. It's got to be up a little bit higher than that. IAC hold is at 15%. That kind of improved the return to idle. I hope this is showing up. I can't tell. We've now bumped up our idle spark control 47 and 47. It was 34 and 47. So increasing the P term should help with oscillation, which it appears that it did. I had originally kind of played with these. I turned them both down to 15 and 15, and that it would oscillate a lot when it was returning to idle, but then it would settle out and it would be pretty good. So I just decided that I needed to keep the proportional and the derivative very close to each other and just turn up the gains. And by turning up the gains, it seemed to stabilize it. So that's how I got this thing to kind of idle pretty decent. The idle timing itself is in the 26 range. Crappy combustion chambers, it's just all those things. You talk to some people and they go 26 degrees. Well, if you had a vacuum distributor on here, and you were running manifold vacuum, yeah, it would have 26 degrees at idle because your initial needs to be 8 or 10 or 12. Yeah, take 12 and add 14 on top of that. That's how you get to 26. And a lot of distributor vacuum advances are hooked up to manifold vacuum. So immediately, of course, in this low RPM range, you open up the throttle and it backs it off a few degrees. Now, I found that it still likes it up in the mid-20s at the lower RPM. It just doesn't make any power. It's not knocking or pinging or anything like that. It's just, it likes more timing. And So that's that. 34 at 2500, and of course we taper it all the way. I take this thing all the way up to 39 in the lower vacuum area to just try and get some mileage out of it. Jeff was a little worried when I talked to him. He said you might be getting some light load pinging you might not hear. Well, I haven't noticed anything. I pulled the plugs and looked at the cylinders and looked at the pistons with the bore scope. I'm not seeing anything. He said you probably won't. Well, if I'm not seeing anything, and I probably won't, then what harm is being done? Maybe so. Maybe I might break a ringland or something. But you know what? It seems to run really good like this, so I'm going to leave it alone. So that's kind of where we're at. Learn to build one of these timing graphs. Holley's got a video on it. Somebody made a comment on one of my videos. I think it was the one where I did the Phytech versus Sniper. Somebody had mentioned. I've done a bunch of Sniper installs and I've never used the software. Well, then you're not doing your clients or whoever, because it sounded like he had a shop, not doing them justice. You cannot dial one of these damn things in by setting these 3 settings right here. The curve, there is no curve with the basic table. It literally goes from idle to cruise or wide open by 1400 RPM. It's awful. You need to learn how to make a 3D map like this. This is what it looks like here, and it's a relatively nice looking map, and it's got a nice slope to it that's kind of designed for this motor. You don't want all your timing coming in that soon. It just doesn't give you enough. If you look at the graph with the just setting it with the basic settings, it's awful. It's there's somebody else right now. I'm checking out his tune for him right now, and he's using the basic settings, and it's really bad. So, at any rate, the same goes for the AFR. The AFR settings are real basic. So if you're a professional installing one of these, you need to learn to use this software, and you need to do a little bit more than setting these basic settings. I get it. Holley gives it to you just so you can get it running. But if you watch their video on setting up a timing table, they tell you, oh, don't use these settings. He goes, they're basic, and, that's exactly what it means is basic. That's pretty much what he says. And absolutely, you need to curve it. You can't use those 3 basic things. You can't change the curve speed, or you can't adjust the curve at all. You can scale it however you want. By the way, you can change all these numbers down here too. I never scaled it down from 7,000 because it doesn't really need to be. But here I absolutely did change the map on here. I rescaled this because it gave me more room to adjust. It gave me more fidelity in the timing table. I think it was scaled up to 210 because it's got a 2-bar map in it. So I scaled it to 105, and all you have to do is just change the number at the top and the bottom. You can fill it in. Now, Holley's got a video that tells you how to do that, so I'm not going to show you. But, play around with it. The worst thing you're going to do is screw it up, and it's not going to run right, and you can put it back. I encourage people to go in here and adjust it. The other thing that I've played with is acceleration enrichment. This is what you get by setting the basic acceleration enrichment curve, and it's terrible. And this is something that I did play with making a curve out of, and it was not as good. It seems to like this really flat curve, and really before 60 or 67% TPS rate of change, which is percent per second times 10. So that's what 100 millisecond. It's a 100 millisecond division, I believe, if I'm doing my math correctly here. Let's see, times 10, that'd be tenth of a second, right? 1 second times 10 would be a tenth of a second. So this is rate of change per tenth of a second. So it doesn't need a lot of acceleration enrichment because it's only 200 cubic inches. This seems to work very well. It feels good this way, and I can play with it on the fly. The second you change this curve here, I can't adjust it from the screen. So this is something that I could probably work out a little bit better if I was just focused on it, but it's not that important. It was way too rich. It was up in the 20s down here at like 13%. It was dumping way too much fuel in. So, when you dump too much fuel in, you just kind of get a little bit of a bog. Not enough, it's going to stutter. Well, it's not stuttering, so it seems to like this right where it's at, and I just played with the settings. I want to say the setting is at like 9.8 pounds per hour. I think that's just an average number, and it automatically drives this curve, which is not really a curve. It's pretty ugly looking, but it seems happy, and it's not that important of a setting. But certainly timing, AFR, just keep playing with it. You play with those settings that I showed, the idle timing control, your timing setting, your overall idle timing, timing at idle, and of course your idle AFR. Like I'm going from 13.2 to 13.5 made all the difference in the world. Picked up like 2 inches of vacuum at idle, and it smoothed it out. So anyways, that's enough rambling. This, like I said, is going to be the last video that I will do talking about tuning a Sniper 2300. I'm happy with where it is, and I'm not going to play with it again. So more things in the future when we do the HP, which will happen someday. It's just one of those things right now. I'm not pushing to get it done, and it's kind of a pet project, not only for Jeff but for me. It's not a run-of-the-mill 200. So, there's a lot of things that we have to do to make it work. We got to make a custom rocker shaft, or rather custom rockers from an FE, because we need to get a higher ratio rocker in there because we're trying to keep the cam a little bit smaller. There's work that has to be done. The head is not quite right. So there's a lot of planning going on and discussion that we're having about what we're going to do with that before we actually do it. And you only get one shot at that head. If we need to machine it, we don't want to do something wrong. So at any rate, it will come in the future. It's just not going to be, within the next few weeks. And here's just some video of it idling after we took it for a drive and got the temperature stabilized and everything. You can see how the vacuum has dropped, which is good. The map has dropped, so the vacuum has gone up. And it's very stable. It's very, very acceptable like this.